Captain Slog, Stardate 16. These are the continued voyages of Ensigns Mark and Eddie as we trek our way through all of Star Trek The Next Generation. Coming to you live from 10 Forward, where we are watching the canonically established recordings of all these episodes off of the ship's computer. Anyway, I'm Eddie Edwards. I'm joined as always by Mark O'Neill. Mark, how you doing? How you been?
Getting there. I don't really have much to have at the start, but I'm going to a restaurant tonight that I'm really looking forward to.
Oh.
And if it's good, I'll tell everyone about it on the next episode. So tune in, true believers, because you never know. You might be like, oh my god, I'm in Glasgow and I really need some Mexican food in the West End of Glasgow, where there's Mexican food fucking everywhere. Because Mexican food is like so. Glasgow's a shithole.
Very Mexican,
right? Like culturally, like don't tell this to other Glaswegian people, and luckily none of them will listen to this. But as a city, it's just the worst. No, it's not. Manchester's the worst, but it's kind of like Glaswegian people. First of all, are born with the inane, but also the innate understanding that they are the most hilarious person who has ever lived.
Whether Scousers have the same thing.
Yeah, whether that's true or not. No, I like Scousers. Whether that's true or not is up in the air. But culture here is asking people what school they went to so that you know what football team they are tangentially connected to, so that you can make sure that you're stabbing the correct person, right? It's great, but also fuck everything about it. When I first lived in Glasgow, and by that I mean when I was born, there wasn't really that much going on. There was your usual like fish and chips, but food culture hadn't really gotten here yet. Mexican food is kind of one of the first, other than obviously we've had Indian food and Chinese food for so long that racists just think that it's part of our own culture.
Britain is one of the only nations other than that is outside of like the Indian Peninsula that invents curries. There's people in India like going, what's a chicken tikka masala? That's not even a thing. What?
Chicken tikka masala was invented in Glasgow, and despite everything I've just said about Glasgow, if anyone from Birmingham tries to argue with me on that, I'll ask you what school you went to, which as we've just decided. So the Mexican food in Glasgow, there's a lot of it, and it's all fairly good. Not as good as in London, but I've heard that this one is really good. So anyway, if you're in Glasgow in the West End and you're not directly next to a Mexican restaurant, in which case just go into that one, it's probably fine. Try El Jefe's, which I say that I might come back next week and it might have been shit.
Yeah, it's either next week will either be a scathing review of El Jefe's, or we won't mention it because the people in the service industry have enough shit. So,
all right, fair enough.
So I don't want to be those fuckers who leave 2-star reviews. You're ruining somebody's livelihood.
I just had to deal with a 1-star review, which, to be fair, was somewhat justified.
Did you start by asking what school they went to?
They left in ribbons, mate. No, I have to deal with the fucking star review process, and honestly, if you leave 4 stars out of 5 for something because you think that you can genuinely tell the difference between a 4-star service and a 5-star service, please make yourself known, because your overinflated sense of self-importance is probably enough to power a small country. So how you doing, Eddie?
Yeah. I had to fix a sofa this week. So that was when we moved into this place. We got a sofa from a charity shop, and I am what's known as a large man. So and this is quite a worn out sofa. So when I sat on it one day, sometimes you sit on a sofa and it stick like crumples, and you're like, oh, that's a spring gone. I'm going to have to get in there and open it up. No. The entire wooden piece across the back of the sofa that all of the springs were in had broken in half. Mm-hmm. So I got to do one of those fun activities where you look at something. So every now and then you look at something and be like, you know what, actually, I think I have all of the tools needed to fix this. So I had to open the back of the sofa, get a bit of wood, replace it, put all the clips for the springs on and put it all in. And now I've got a sofa that works completely fine, looks more or less exactly the same as it did before, but I'm unusually proud of. And I can't explain why to anybody who comes around and sees it, because all they see is a sofa. And it's like, no, I fixed that. And it's like that's the problem with fixing something. Like, I haven't made anything. It's just back to where it was before I broke it. So while I've got immense pride in the work I've done, there's literally nothing to show for it. It's just unfucked.
I haven't unfucked anything recently, so I'm proud of you. I know how it feels. I know how it feels the first time that you repair something with like anything other than duct tape, which apparently is pronounced duct tape, and the world has just gone on this weird 360 experience where everyone was like, hey, it's not called duct tape, it's called duct tape because you use it in ducts, but apparently it's terrible for use in ducts, and that was just invented by a pedant. What it's actually used for is securing one duck to another.
I see in my head, sometimes when you think you've gotten to the punchline first, I thought you was going to say repairing ducks. So you swerved me at the end there and caught me off guard. Well done.
Nice. Speaking of being caught off guard, this was quite a pleasant little episode of Star Trek.
It was.
Yeah.
I have some slight issues with just how pleasant it was, given the subject nature.
and how they were just let away with it at the end. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. If this episode is when the bow breaks. It is. Fortunately, not as Wesley heavy an episode as I was worried about when I saw the description. They find a weird planet. They nick some of their kids. That's the plot of this episode.
Yeah.
That's the very basically the plot. And at the end, they resolve it, and the kids come back, and nobody faces any charges.
Nope. If anything, the criminals, the people who stole the kids, actually come out better from the experience.
Yeah, and it ends with a sitcom-style laughing freeze frame moment, which again, I will remind you, this is an episode in which 6 children are kidnapped.
What's your favourite piece of media in which a bunch of children are kidnapped?
Piper O'Hanlon. Because pay your fucking freelancers.
Yeah. My favourite...
do you reckon they're like, we'll let you get rid of all the rats, we'll pay you in exposure?
Like, I don't believe in being paid in exposure, right? I think it's really shady. I do actually charge for my time for things, because I think it is valuable. If you're listening to this for 3, it's because I put so little fucking effort into this that I don't need the time that I spend recording it. I would pay you. No, that doesn't make any sense. So at the time, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, right? So his thing is, he shows up, he says, I've got a magic flute. First of all, why isn't anyone like, how does that work? They just accept it. He goes, I have a magic flute and I can use it to get rid of all the rats. And the people of Hamelin are like, yeah, that checks out. So he uses the flute to get rid of the rats, right? And then when they don't pay him, he obviously takes all of their kids. The thing is, there was a lot of rats back then. There's a lot of rats now.
Yeah.
So if that is his first gig, like, yeah, you don't want to pay him an exposure, but he is kind of coming out of nowhere, and it's not like the town is more overrun by rats than anywhere else. The rat service, I guess it's about the plague or whatever, but the actual service that he's providing isn't really that necessary. So, I mean, pay your freelancers, but I think he should have just gone, listen, can you just leave a review on my website? that just says that I done this really well.
I think it's short-sighted that he just gets rid of the rats.
Yeah.
This man has acquired an army of rats. There's literally a Batman villain. I mean, if you've seen Suicide Squad, it's one of the special powers of the Suicide Squad. It's surprisingly more useful than you would think, because there is literally millions of rats in every major city. He could literally take over the world with this power.
No, you're right. But then, how much can he control the rats, or do they just follow him?
That's still terrifying. If you get enough rats, if he just went on a tour of Europe,
so long as you're always faster than the rats,
yeah,
you're jamming. Just never go to sleep. I do some freelance editing work every now and again, and I got bummed once because I didn't put a watermark on the preview video that I sent, which the client was just like, yeah, I made a, it was a, I can't remember it. It was, I can't remember what it was, but she obviously was like, well, this is about 90% done, so it's basically done. So I'll fuck that guy, I won't pay him. So after that, I started putting a watermark. The next job that I got was for someone's dad's birthday. It was basically getting all the phone messages in that people have, hi, James, Shuba Luba, Gob Gob, I remember that from the olden days, happy birthday, you old fuck. Try not to break a hip when you're shagging all those prostitutes. I know that, right? And I put them all together, but what I did was I done a watermark of a giant dick and balls. And I sent it.
Leave it on.
I sent the preview, and they were supposed to put it on like the big screen at a party. Everyone had filmed it in fucking vertical orientation, so it made me physically sick that they were going to do this. But the day of, she still hadn't gotten back to me to be like, that's great, can you send the one without the dick? And I was like, oh my god, this is gonna, oh shit. But about an hour before the party was supposed to start, she was like, oh sorry, I'm late. It's a story that didn't have an ending, really, much like this one. So the Enterprise comes up against a planet that's been hidden from the rest of the universe because they're very scientifically advanced. Like,
yeah,
they're so scientifically advanced that they can just pursue art or anything else, which to me was bizarre, because isn't that what the Federation is?
Thank you. That was my yeah. How is that? They've stumbled across what to us is a utopian vision of the future, but to them was Tuesday. It's
the only difference between their society and ours is that the children are told that they don't have to learn maths at school.
Yeah, and the transporters are slightly quicker.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like, oh, we can't beam through their shields, but people can't beam through your shield. That's the point of having shields. It's
So
sorry, I want to point out as well before we get on. Kim Manners directed this episode. This is the only episode of Star Trek directed by Kim Manners. If you don't know who Kim Manners is, if you've ever watched X-Files or Supernatural, you've seen Kim Manners' name. They did all of that. They worked on so much TV.
Yeah.
They're legendary. And I saw Kim Manners' name. And,
recently.
Not that apparently. That was it was one of those ones where I was like, oh, I've never actually looked at Kim Manners' IMDb page, and it's just every TV show you've ever enjoyed.
I love me a supernatural procedural. Especially one where my brother and I send text messages about supernatural episodes to each other quite often, and it's always on the episodes. We play a game, which is, what is the most baffling crime scene that a detective could walk into after an episode of Supernatural. So there is a Christmas episode where two pagan gods in the form of a nice older Christmas stereotype couple kidnap people from their beds dressed as Santa Claus and torture them in the basement, and Sam and Dean solve this problem by stabbing them with the branches of a Christmas tree. a detective has to walk into that house, see the couple stabbed on the floor and think, oh my god, what the fuck has happened? Then go down into the basement and find the bodies of the missing people from the rest of the town strung up on meat hooks. And at that point, surely they're just like, you know what? Car accident.
My favourite game to play with Supernatural is at the beginning of it, before the opening credits, is to guess whether the blood splash is coming left to right, right to left, or very rarely down to up.
The down to up one, that's a popular one, isn't it? Not a popular one.
I love it when it's demon blood, like when it's like, oh, the scary supernatural thing's been murdered by something even worse, and you're like. But Supernatural's great. Well, let's rephrase that. The first 5 seasons of Supernatural are great. Even up to season 8 is really, really good. And then the rest of it is a lot of fun, but not good.
Yeah, I agree. So I used to play a game with the people that I worked with in a cinema. At lunchtime, we would stick on an episode of NCIS. And we'd bet something, like if we had like a chocolate bar or something, we'd bet it against each other. And the game was who can be the quickest to figure out what the fuck this has to do with the Navy.
NCIS, me and my old flatmate Matt used to watch all the time, and the NCIS is a TV show that has never once raised the bar to a level that it can no longer clear it.
Yeah.
It is very happy being exactly where it is. It knows what it is, and it's just going to keep doing that forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And when those actors leave that show, you'll never hear from them again.
Did you know it's the most watched television show on the planet?
Really?
Yeah. And it has been for like 10 years running.
I'm guessing it's because it's not like it's everybody's 809th favourite show. Nobody hates it. Nobody has a strong enough opinion on it either way. But
I like it.
Yeah.
I like the characters. They're fun. I like that teenage emo girl that's 65 years old. So the shields, right? The shields. Not only are they quite advanced shield wise, but they actually shield the planet from light, meaning that the planet is effectively invisible.
Yeah.
They hear, first of all, well, my first note is, did you notice that lots of sexy Riker moves when he walks down the hallway? Riker was taking that hallway like his own. But then they get in and Captain Picard says, have you heard of Altea? Riker says, yes, of course, it's the mythical planet.
Yeah, it's their version of Atlantis.
Yeah, no one knows if it's real. And Picard says, well, we might have found it, but we don't have it on our sensors. Troy then says that she can sense it, which I have to say is a real roll of the dice on her part, because obviously she can't.
Troy's brilliant in this episode in terms of just being right, because after the kids get kidnapped, Troy is trying to explain to the Ordeans why this might be a problem, and she uses the phrase, humans are unusually attached to their offspring. I will remind you of Troy's relationship with her fucking mother at this point.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that they do specifically play up the fact that it's humans particularly who care about their kids. Other species apparently don't, which, look, I don't expect anybody who listens to the show to be an expert on the concept of evolutionary biology. But if you don't care passionately about keeping your kids alive, your species cannot evolve.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, love is but a series of chemicals that your brain releases to keep you alive for another second.
Yeah, right up until the point you reproduce, at which point, from a genetic standpoint, you don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
All that matters is making sure your offspring survives to a point where it can reproduce.
And that's why I've never donated to a sperm clinic. Because I don't want to take the risk. Because I'll know when it happens. If I had donated to a sperm clinic, I'd be sitting on the bus one day and all of a sudden I'd get a chill, and that's when I realised I wasn't important anymore. And then 18 years later, they'd come fucking showing up, looking for the money, and there isn't any, Eddie, there isn't any, because do you know what? I've wasted my fucking life. I've wasted all my potential. Everything. I'm a fucking shell of a man, and and it's your fault. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the 18-year-old that's just showed up at my door. And it's your fucking fault. I didn't even need that 10 quid that much. I just thought it'd be interesting to see what a sperm bank was like. And now you fucking killed me. Anyway, come in.
Okay, I have a question about this society, Mark. Because they say they've got this philosophy where everything has to be traded for a price, which I assume means that they've got no exploitative business practices and therefore no billionaires.
Yeah.
So why do they need all these children? If not for a secret underground paedophile billionaire ring, I don't understand. also, Mark, as well. The Ordeans seem to know a lot about the Enterprise. Like they say, we've been monitoring you for some time, and they've probably gone through their computer records. At no point during any of this have they run across the concept of adoption.
Yeah,
they could have been like, "Hey guys, weird question. We can't reproduce. Have you got any spare kids?" And then the Enterprise would have been, "Actually, we've had 9 red shirts die this week."
My favourite, it's not to do with this. It's because you didn't reciprocate a question that I asked earlier, like a dick.
Okay.
My favourite piece of media to deal with stolen children, right, is there's a series of Torchwood called Children of Earth.
Oh, so good.
And I love it. Right, it's genuinely great. It's like it was 5 episodes over 5 nights. It's basically. What if a problem happened to Earth that was so fucking heinous, and the humans dealt with it in such a terrible way that the Doctor didn't even bother showing up to solve the situation? That's not a subtext. Gwen literally says that is what's happening. But the bad guys in this series of Torchwood, they are a race of kind of sentient, almost like plant snake looking things, and they come to Earth, and they first of all, what they want is really horrible. They don't want the children like the Alteans. They want the children because children have a certain brain chemical that they use to get high. Great, right? But the best thing about it is, and this was, I thought, was a spectacular piece of writing, which is the aliens come to Earth and they say, "Give us 10% of your kids, or we'll take 50%."
Yeah.
Or if you've never seen Torchwood Children of Earth, watch it. It's fantastic. There's a great politics in it.
Yeah. There's the entire subplot with the civil servant who's involved in overseeing it, and them being well, obviously somebody from outside's going to have to give up some of their kids, otherwise the rest of it. And the line, it has the line, "Well, how are we choosing these children? It should be random." No, what are the school league tables for? It's yeah. It's also the fact that it's when you learn that it's like this is spoilers for a TV show that came out a long time ago, but you do find out as well that it's not the reason that they're here isn't to get children, it's to get more children because they've been here before, and we just gave them kids.
Yeah, spoilers. Captain Jack is the one that gave them the kids to make them go away.
It's so fucking good.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's so good. Also, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and it does raise the question: what does the planet do when the Doctor isn't going to show up? It's a phenomenal television. But so the next thing, they have a superior beaming technology.
Yes,
and they can beam through the Enterprise's shields, and they can also scan through them, and they basically just take 6 kids out of the hands, quite literally out of the hands of their parents.
The best kids, they make it clear. It's the ones they've decided are the best.
Yeah, and Dr. Crusher
Wesley
seems to be exactly appropriately bothered about Wesley disappearing, which is not.
The parents have a meeting at one point, and they're all very upset, and Beverly is like, "Well, we knew the risks when we signed on."
Yeah.
I want to see that box on the forms. When you sign up at Starfleet, Starfleet is not liable for the loss of any children.
Yeah, I imagine it. I imagine the tick box just says, the question is, "Got kids?" And the first option is no, and the second option is oofed.
Yeah. One of the through lines with this episode as well is that Picard is trying to work out how to save the kids, but there's a whole thing where he's like, well, if the Ordeans throw their cloak up again, what are we going to do? And it's like, well, you still know where the planet is, Picard. It's not like they can shield it and then fly away slowly. It's a planet, so just hang around here and get more people. But
that was something that I found quite baffling, because to go against what you just said, the Alteans, they use the special effect that will be later used to show Q flying them into the Delta Quadrant in Q. And they send them away, and it's like 3 days away, and then the Alteans message the Enterprise and say, look, if you try to take your kids back, we'll send you so far away that they'll be grandparents by the time you find them, which is like a really effective threat. But then they just fly back there. Like, surely the Alteans would be like, yeah, they're not coming back here to watch, are they? They're clearly going to get their kids back. So just do it.
That's a good point.
I don't think this needs to be said. I don't actually support the act of stealing children.
No. So let's be honest, Mark, because we need to address this. It's not stealing. They do offer a fair price. That's the point. Is Picard has to negotiate with them, and he's like just doing it to keep them talking while they work out how to get their kids back. So, Mark, I thought I'd do some research into this. So I googled how much is the fair price for a child, and then because I did that on a work computer, I had to have a conversation with HR.
What race?
But, right. Do you want to know? I've got price from low to high. Mm-hmm. The most expensive you're going to splash out for a child in modern day planet Earth is $270,000.
That's cheap.
Gets you a Roma child bride. That's your most expensive. But in Mozambique, apparently, you can buy a baby for $2.
Just get 5 of them. It's like McNuggets. There's no point buying a 9 nugget box. Just get the 20.
If you're looking to buy a UK child, you're looking somewhere in the region of 25 grand. That's American though, so probably about 20 grand UK.
That's cheaper than half a Tesla.
Yeah.
Which is the monetary system by which I value human lives. How many Teslas is that person worth?
Yeah, I mean, what you really need is, like, if you're thinking you can live off selling a child for that much money, you can't, unless of course you manage to get the UK press on your side somehow and do a series of books and interviews all your life, and then hopefully think that people forget at some point that it's your fault.
Yep.
All I'm saying is, if the McCanns had been working class, they would have been imprisoned the moment they got back to the UK. Anyway.
But anyway, speaking of the working class, I have a theory. So this planet that we go to, Altea, we see that it's like an artist's paradise. Like, you go there, you don't have to do anything other than pursue the art, right? Which made me wonder: is there a working class on this planet whose blood is fueling all of this? Like, comfort? Because I had a thought, right? Imagine if you... Obviously, perception is reality, right? But imagine if you were an alien and you came down to Earth and your one point of contact was just Jacob Rees-Mogg's house, right? So, like, a real super class Victorian fucking Charles Dickens villain of a Tory. If the alien said, tell us what life is like here, but we're not going to leave this house. We just want you to give us an accurate representation. They'd think that being a Tory was class.
Yeah.
Like, they think it was amazing. Is that what's happening here?
Well, yeah, they don't seem to leave the one complex.
Yeah.
And the people in that complex seem bafflingly out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reference, like, one of them, like, is good at wood carving. Like, that's the talent they've identified in them. So he carves a dolphin, and they're like, oh, it's a dolphin. And then they're like, and he explains fish to them, and they're like, oh yeah, we used to have fish in the ocean, and then they just walk past that as if I can't. If you told me, Mark, that there was an entire category of life that used to exist on my planet that didn't exist anymore, and it wasn't something we were aware of, like it's not like the dinosaurs. If they just went, if like somebody turned up and went, oh, it's weird, where are all the flamble bombs gone? You go, what are the flamble bombs? You know, the dominant species. There were loads of them all over the place, like 300 years ago, and then they just disappeared, and we didn't talk about it. I'd be fucking concerned about that. that would be my yeah. It's yeah. So it's what. So one of the kids is a musician, one is like a woodworker, and you see one playing a genuinely shit video game. Yeah,
and Wesley.
Yeah, it's
everyone's favourite son.
The write-up of this episode
his own mother.
The write-up of this episode says that the children lead a passive resistance against like through non-violent non-cooperation. That's what the write-up of this episode on Netflix says. So I was figuring that was going to be like the bulk of the episode, but no, that's something that Wesley decides to do with like 12 minutes left.
Did you the kind of the main Altean, not the lads, the woman,
the one who's got the most baffling haircut we've seen in Star Trek so far.
Yeah,
a braid and a quiff. I don't what.
Did you recognise her from another? I wouldn't even use the word franchise because, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one of them. Series with star in the title.
With star in the title, I didn't. I did recognise her as Lillian Luthor, Lex and Lana Luthor's mum from Supergirl.
So she was the captain of the ship that Carmen Ibanez is on in Starship Troopers.
Oh,
she gets crushed by the door. I sat there the entire episode promising not to go on IMDb, torturing myself trying to figure out who that woman was.
Yeah,
and
I had the same with Raju, Jerry Hardin, the actor who I did eventually give up and look for, who is the like main antagonist in this episode. And when I saw it, I hated myself for not getting it because he was, of course, Deep Throat in the first 2 seasons of the X-Files.
Ah, right.
He was the guy feeding Mulder all of his information.
So going back to the passive resistance, the kids decide. So look, the Alteans, they can't have children, so they steal a bunch of children from the Enterprise, saying that they are going to teach the children the Altean way of life and culture, so that they then can go on to reproduce. And it's more about keeping the culture alive than it is genetics, which is fine. 2 problems. They don't bring enough kids for a viable gene pool.
No, that's correct.
And actually, I don't know why I said 2 problems, because that's the one. That's going to be a real incesty planet.
Yeah.
But then the kids obviously don't like being taken away from their parents, which the Aldeans obviously kind of figure out because Captain Starship Troopers is holding a little girl, but the little girl has been promised to another family. Yeah. And when your man says, no, we have to give it to the other family, she says, I'll never let her go, which is good because now you know how Dr. Crusher should feel. But
yeah, they're assigned units, and they say that the units are like groups of people who are bond together by common interests. And Wesley says, oh, like a family, which shows that Wesley doesn't know what a family is, because for instance, in Wesley's own family, Wesley is quite interested in the subject of Wesley, whereas Beverly couldn't give a toss.
She abandons him for an entire season because she wasn't getting paid enough to be his mother. I don't know what this was in reference to, because it's actually been, we've had to reschedule this, so it's been about 3 days since I watched this episode. But at some point in this episode, I've written down in my note, this is what Britain would have looked like under Corbyn. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I'm similar to you. I'm not exactly certain what scenes certain of my notes apply to. I've got a note here that just says Crusher gets to see Wesley, but I've put "gets" in quotation marks. Because Picard bullshits her onto the planet before asking if she wants to come. Just like assuming that there would be some sort of trace of motherly instinct. That she'd be like, well, I want to come down. But you can tell from the look on her face, she's like...
He bullshits her in the same way that, like, when John Crusher was like, yeah, I've definitely pulled out, don't worry about it.
I don't know, maybe they wanted a kid. They didn't know it was going to turn out to be Wesley.
Yeah. So the kids eventually realise that they missed their parents and they want to get back to them, but the Aldeans won't let them. So, as you said, they sit... They do a bit of a sit-in, they do a bit of passive resistance. And Wesley explains this and says, all we do is just ignore them and we don't do anything, and eventually they'll just get so sick of us that they'll send us back, which presumably he has experience with. Now, it's nice to see a bit of passive resistance being performed. Obviously, Wesley has read a biography of Bobby Sands, so that's good. It's nice to see the Bobby Sands method. Not as much fecal matter as I was expecting, but can't win them all. But it's nice to see Wesley taking charge. I was reading about the production of this, and apparently the director of the episode had the same feeling as you were, which basically boiled down to, I was worried there was going to be a lot of Wesley in this, but it turned out to be alright. He said that they said, I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, they said that, oh no, it was Kim Manners, yeah, so Kim said that Wesley really took charge of the other kids, and apparently he was an absolute pleasure to work with, and really stood in as the head of that little unit, which Wesley's the best character at the moment.
I do think we do have to seriously address this as a point, which is that as far as I'm aware, there's not a single human being on the planet who has a bad word to say about Will Wheaton. He just seems like one of the genuinely one of the most loveliest, nicest guys around. And it's just, unfortunately, he was the annoying kid in Star Trek.
and now that we've gotten the weekly praise for Will Wheaton out, I will put in the other thing that Laura says that we say in every episode. This is a great Data episode.
Yeah, there's some very good Data happening in and around in the background of this. I quite like that. Because there's a bit where, like, Data's, like, he's trying to work out one way of punching through the shield, but he's also got another theory about something like that, and he's doing the mathematical calculations for that in his head. Like, I think at the same time, it's like, oh, there's, like, this many permutations. It'll take a while for me to work through all of them. And it's something like a ridiculous, like, 300 million or something like that. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do that in my head while I sit at the computer and do this other thing.
While I fly your starship.
Picard has a line in this episode which is a great Picard line, but when I heard it, I felt like it belonged in, like, this is the kind of thing somebody should post on Facebook over the picture of a forest, and it was, things are only impossible until they're not. That's the sort of thing that your racist auntie would post on Facebook, and then just like with like the hashtag believe in yourself.
Oh yeah, and then hashtag no one. I bet no one shares this. Can't see anything these days.
People just scroll by this, but those who stop, they know. I said, oh, fuck off. Yeah, do scroll by it because I've seen 50 of them today on this AIDS site.
I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to get any grief, but there's a comedian I quite respect that we know who's getting very you can't see anything these days, and it's such an obvious fucking, well, clearly I'm not doing that great with the regular people audience, so I'm going to have to start appealing to those people.
To the you can't joke about anything crowd, I did a solid 5 minutes the other day on my brain tumour, which so yes you can. If you it's like you just got to be in the right position and have the right angle on it.
Yeah, but what you're saying? I can't do 5 minutes about the brain tumour in the head of a Down syndrome kid that I kicked the other day. Was that what you're fucking saying? Fucking
like you
Nazis, mate.
It's like you can, but it probably won't get any laughs.
Yeah, exactly. Piss off. Anyway, let's not start talking about cancel culture because one, it doesn't exist, and two, piss off.
Pete, the only people who complain about cancel culture do it from their desks in very large houses, in very exclusive neighbourhoods, and never talk to people who they don't even buy their own coffee anymore. They haven't spoken to a poor person in a decade.
There was some spectacular perm work in this episode from that mum. So that scene was quite frustrating for Laura because she was trying. So that there's a yellow shirt, a woman, and the yellow shirt in Next Gen. I'm not quite sure. I think it means operations, doesn't it?
And so I've seen a theory float around about the red shirt, yellow shirt thing, and it's never been addressed as true. It's just a fan theory that floats around, and it's so genius. I want it to just accept it as canon, which is at some point there is an event where like an entire crew of Starfleet officers get wiped out, and it's everybody on board that ship was a red shirt, and the only survivor is the captain. Who's a gold shirt in the original, and because of this, to sort of like they introduced a bunch of like more safety measures, which is why we've not had that much like red shirt death up until this point. And as a symbolic gesture, Starfleet changed the colours over because so that the commanders now had to wear the red as like a look. It's not cursed. It's not a thing. There's only a certain number of colours. Green doesn't show up that well on television.
Yeah, I agree. So this woman, she's one of the parents of the missing children, and Laura was getting quite frustrated because she has a spectacular perm that covers her shoulders, but it means that you can't see the pips on her uniform. So Laura was trying to figure out like what rank she was to see how well women are doing on the starship. But I think the fact that a woman was more concerned about her perm than being able to show what rank she was really tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
What you failed to take into account, Mark, is that perm is a rank. That's you get 4 pips, and then before you get the 5th one, you get a perm.
Can't wait for Picard to become an admiral to get it.
One other thing is pretty interesting. So one of the kids is like they've got like special tools, so they can like bring out the talents in this kid. It's like that episode of Futurama where Fry gets the devil's hands and can suddenly play the holophoner. And there's a musician kid, and they get her to play some stuff. And I think it was absolutely stunning, Mark, that she knocked out a tune in the exact style of the composer of the incidental music for Star Trek. Minimal effort. You could have hired a second musician. You could have asked that first musician, just do something different, mate.
Yeah. Who do you think provides the music for the episodes of The Next Generation that Riker is watching? Do you think it's
those two scantily clad women playing the harp.
Yeah, that's what Riker was enjoying. It was just like, oh, we've got that draft for whatever the Naked Now, and he's like, yeah, let me hear it. Yeah, great.
What else is there to talk about? Oh, Wesley sneakily creeps into the room of a sleeping 6-year-old. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah,
that is a scene that happens in this show. In fact, the only person in this entire episode who I can guarantee you isn't a nonce is Picard, because he's deeply uncomfortable when that child hugs him. Although that might be because he's got an erection. Who knows?
Maybe
that's why Picard doesn't like kids. He doesn't trust himself around them.
I promised Laura a few weeks ago that I was going to stop using pedo jokes as a crutch. So I have absolutely no comment whatsoever.
It's literally an episode of Star Trek where they steal kids. There was going to be some nonce jokes.
Yeah. I learned something interesting that you know the thing where they go into the power source.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I learned something interesting about that prop.
Oh right.
But I forgot it. So.
Yeah,
Look it up yourself.
yeah.
It's on Memory Alpha. It made me go, oh,
I'll look that up.
yeah, get back to me.
It's so yeah, just in case anybody hadn't guessed, they can't have kids because it's like a radiation leak from their power source that they don't know how it works. There's a bit in this where it's like they're like, you don't know anything about how your technology works, it's killing you, and the bloke just goes, no.
Yeah.
It's with all of the smug self-righteous dismissiveness of an anti-vaxxer. It's just casually, no, not true.
Also, the radiation that's killing them, it's not like radiation that they're not aware of or anything. They're a super advanced, high-tech society, and the radiation that's killing them is a greenhouse effect from the sun with their own shields.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously this is a television show that was made in the 80s, but I find it impossible that a society could get to that level and haven't solved climate change. It doesn't make any sense.
The problem is they had solved it, but like as they claim, though, like they basically had decided as a society they'd finished science.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, we'll just do art and music and stuff. And look, I'm not saying art and music has no value, but imagine if we'd done that in like the 18th century and not invented the electric fucking guitar or the internet. You know, you've got it's like you need to, like, if you're the supercomputer running this civilization, there should be a part of you that goes, I'm going to need at least 10% of these fuckers to know basic maths.
Yeah.
But
at the end of the day, there is no point in saving the species if we don't have art or music. Which is a paraphrase of a Winston Churchill quote.
yeah.
And another paraphrase of a Winston Churchill quote would be, where would Britain be if it wasn't for the concentration camps we made in Africa? So I think what he actually said was something like, you drink too much, or you're ugly in the morning and I'm just hungover. But what he was talking about is concentration camps.
He was a very funny man for a horrible racist. I just want to be clear, Winston Churchill, not the most horrible racist of the time. In fact, there's light years between him and the next tier up, and that's why he was the good guy. But it doesn't mean he was actually a good guy.
No. But he did somewhat contribute to beating the Nazis. See, I can just give him actual credit for good things that he did, but also fuck him.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
My biggest question is I don't understand. So here's a question for you, Mike. If I was going through all of like the major qualities of Winston Churchill, right? He was a
Played
decisive,
by Gary Oldman.
Yeah, he was a decisive leader. I'll give him that. He wasn't afraid to make brave decisions. He was incredibly faithful to his wife. Like, he never cheated on her or like divvied away from her. And
he also changed his mind on things when presented with new evidence and life experience, which I genuinely respect.
And he also seriously, like, actually dealt with a genuine mental health struggle that he openly talked about and was okay with. And he was a racist. Yeah. Now, the reason I bring that up is I can't see any but one of those qualities that our current Prime Minister, who calls that man a hero, actually would think of as a good thing, except for the racism. Is that the only reason Boris likes Winston Churchill?
Well, you know what they say, Eddie, you fuck one sheep. Have you got anything else? Because we've got dinner reservations. At Gosha.
I mean, all I've really got in here is like that. I do find it deeply. It's a very light-hearted episode in terms of approach to what is a deeply disturbing concept. And like I say, it does end with that everyone laughs sitcom ending because Picard has to be in the same room as a child and doesn't immediately hit them. Which is like, I suppose as well, there's not a lot of character growth on Star Trek Next Generation. You get a lot more in Deep Space Nine. If we ever get around to doing that, it's going to be fucking brilliant. But because in Deep Space Nine they're on a space station, it doesn't go anywhere, so the characters instead have to go on emotional journeys. It's
When that kid showed up at the end, by the way, I pointed at the TV and shouted, "That kid doesn't have permission to be on the bridge."
Yeah, which is also more or less Picard's response. And Wesley's like, "Please, just give the child 30 seconds before you shout at her."
Oh.
What the other thing I did want to say, actually, because this is something that occurred to me, the society in this, because they've got the technology, but they don't understand how the technology works, so they're just kind of maintaining it. That's actually like the entire basis for like the Empire, like the Imperium in Warhammer 40k.
Right.
That's their like whole thing. That's like they have machine priests, and it's just people who learn all of like the schematics of all of the machines, so they can put them back exactly that way if they get damaged. And it's like basically it's like a religion where you're taught like scripture. You have to remember it exactly, and as such, their entire society is in steady decline.
That's fun.
And the emperor is like a corpse on a throne that's being kept alive by like a suit that's like an old style, like it's just really important,
like
impressive, like bit of that keeps him alive. But it's been there for millennia, and he's just in constant agony, but can't communicate to the outside world, and everybody worships him.
That's how I feel on a day-to-day basis.
You've got to stop being carried around on that throne. But yeah, no, good episode. I think like good episode. Yeah. It's some interesting ideas. It didn't go too deep on any of them, but they were interesting enough.
Needed a Picard speech at the end.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll tell you the one thing that I do find something in this that is mentioned that doesn't really get developed on, but would be interesting if it did, is this idea that humans are like uniquely attached to their children. It would have been fascinating if that had been more of a thing, like throughout like the rest of like if like when. Like later on, Worf's kid shows up, and if Worf just did not give a fuck, like it wasn't like I'm trying to bond with my child. It's like I have left the child with food and water in a cupboard somewhere.
I have an imaginary woman to fight.
Yeah, I mean that could have been fun, but yeah, overall good. It was a good episode. This is very much. I don't know if we're comparing it to the previous one, which is just god awful, but yeah, no, I liked it. I had fun. It felt like Star Trek. Yeah. Not great Star Trek, but felt like Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I also like that they just, at the end of this episode, they go, we've reseeded the ozone layer.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's just a thing we can do.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, pretty great.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I recommend this one, actually. Seek it out. It's quite fun.
Yeah, it like, basically... most things from season 3 onwards is gonna kick it in the absolute shins. But for a season 1 episode, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's alright. Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Right. Go enjoy your meal then.
I will do. Thank you. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, let us all know next week. Okay.
Yeah, I will do. Right. Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.